Okay, I just read Ozmandias by Shelley, and really, I was reading first Kubla Khan by Coleridge, and I thought this one would be a good one to bring into the discussion because that one, very similar to this one, the death of works, the death of just the fading away of um, a being and their works on the world. I met a traveler from an antique land who said, two vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Near them on the sand, half sunk, a shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command tell that its sculptor well those passions read which yet survive, stamped on these lifeless things. The hand that mocked them, and the heart that fed, and on the pedestal these words appear: My name is Ozmandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. Nothing beside remains. Round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away. Oh, this is very similar to Kubla Khan, which I just read a little while ago, and Moby Dick as well. The despair is really the main point of it, is that everything you've built, everything that you've tried to given everything to kind of preserve, create something, is destined to dust. And but within that, there are these incredible visions. Now this poem, like it's very nightmarish. It's reminds me of some of my favorite darker writers like Hawthorne, Poe, Melville especially. I've already mentioned Moby Dick, but that kind of nightmarish, like if you've ever read Moby Dick, Elijah, which is both funny but very creepy the way he approaches Ishmael and Queequeg in Moby Dick. In the same way this poem begins, I met a traveler from an antique land who said, so the whole thing is told to the narrator who's retelling it to us, and it's just an approach and a warning similar to oh god, what's that one? Rime of the Ancient Mariner by Coleridge. He stops the guy's on his way to a wedding. He's going to life. The wedding is a symbol for life and a new beginning, and he stops him to tell him something about death, and amid that, I'm not as familiar with this poem itself, but it's really awesome, and it's used and referred to a lot in a lot of different movies and different things. Actually, I remember somebody. I used to watch the show Mad Men, and at one point somebody referenced this poem directly. Something, look on my works and despair. But it's used really well in Breaking Bad, the episode that. Well, I don't want to spoil it too much, but it's very closely related, especially the setting too. The setting, the the failures of ambition. The would the Coen Brothers movie, the Western, is a creepy, very creepy. What is it? Buster Scruggs. It's like a Netflix movie, but there's a short story where a character keeps reading this poem over and over again, along with other works of life, and the same kind of thing. You know, this character was quadriplegic, and but he had in him, you know, contained so many different uh, histories, creations of human beings. You know, and you know, he's ultimately destined to dust. You know, like all the ideas in his head. And I think they were kind of suggesting that all of the ideas themselves, not just for this one person, but for all of us, will be destined for dust. Um, you know, there's another great thing that just came to my mind is there's a film version of War of the Worlds with, I think the actor's name was Rod Taylor. There's a lot of different. No, I'm sorry, it's not War of the World. It's The Time Machine with Rod Taylor, and there's an incredible scene in it where he goes very far into the future and questions these people who, you know, are very childlike beings, and they don't really seem to have anything that we would consider as human beings of worthwhile logical, you know, development, you know, in any kind of intellect really. And he asks them about books, and they tell him that they don't even know what books are, but he kind of can kind of figure out what he's describing. They kind of tell him, it's like, yeah, there's something, it's over there, and there's like a single bookshelf in their whole society or something similar to that. And he goes over, and you can see the names. It's like Plato and Shakespeare, and you know, all the things that we think our culture is kind of you know, we find incredibly foundational to our development and education as human beings. You know, obviously Shakespeare's a lot later, but no one would argue that Shakespeare is not important. And we'll definitely be making some videos about him. And if you don't like Shakespeare, I would argue that you just you had it forced on you in some way. You know, like there is a lot to love there, and certainly in plays like Macbeth and Hamlet, King Lear, and you know, plenty of the comedies. The guy was incredibly talented and kind of a foundation for a lot of the other writers I'll discuss on this channel. I completely forgot what I was gonna say. Oh yeah, the guy, he goes over to the bookshelf in the time machine, and he grabs a book, and it just peels away into dust. You know, like that's the kind of recurring theme here, is that everything is destined to dust. You know, we are ashes, and whatever we come to in life is going back to that thing. You know, and um, but in the same thing, there's I see it as art and our connections to each other having a source of infinite hope that can kind of transcend this fact that we are all returning to this quiet, quiet lack of being, you know, a lack of self. And I'm probably going to be discussing this poem again at some point, but I think that's a good start off. Um, Please comment, and you know, in my next video on this, I'll try and address some of them. Okay, take care.